Hi, welcome. This is episode 1 of Tribes, written and read by Samuel Brook-Williams. The sun rose early that morning, blooming on the horizon, bathing the canopy in its mist and cool light. The creatures, usually awake and loud, rest still. No bird song, no morning chorus. The jungle itself seems to sleep. Then from the silence comes a noise, the footsteps and chatter of men. They slip through the brush easily, nimble feet stepping quickly over the roots and leaf litter. 2 men, thin but strong, bows held firmly at their sides. By observing their energetic movements you would think that they were fresh and newly awoken, but these men were in fact returning, tired from the hunt. Fatigue reduced by years of hard labor and toil, in their left hand each fellow held a small sack, though the weight of their prize does not diminish the pace of their strides. Soon the forest thins, the men slow. Before them stand 2 large totems, one on either side of a small gate carved with the faces of animals, the granite-like stone highlighted with rich, thick paint. A wild wooden wall runs off around the edge of the settlement. Creepers grip at its posts, climbing up, reaching towards the sun. Stepping through the gateway reveals a village of stone and wood huts, most built off the ground on stilts, small ladders slung from the doorholes. This place was quiet too. Only the returning hunters are heard, stalking past the huts, making their way to the epicenter. A wide stone circle juts from the ground, sitting a few feet above the packed soil. Both men halt at its edge. They bow slightly, averting their gaze from the ceremonial circle. Above them, cross-legged on the raised dais, sits an old man deep in thought. Long red feathers crown his head like a Roman's laurel wreath. Lips move, but no words are committed to the air. Hands rise and fall in rhythmic fashion. Only after the hunters make their presence known does the man open his eyes, their sly coughs breaking his trance suddenly. A hand is proffered from on high. Soon the day is risen. Our village echoes with the sound of work and the cackle of women's laughter. Children play, chasing one another or chasing animals, always running somewhere. Men cut at a newly felled tree, taking it in turns to strike at the timber with their short axes. The wives stand over stone bowls with long pestles. For them, the morning consists of pounding grain into dust, then mixing the powder with eggs and water for baking. When the smell of freshly baked bread reaches the villagers, they know that the early day's work is done. Every inhabitant descends on the food hut for a communal breakfast, with the noted exception of 2 members of their clan, the old man from the ceremonial area and his daughter Malika. Their hut is the second largest in the village after the communal hall. It stands away from the rest, on tall stilts, behind the ceremonial circle. Within its walls are stored the entire history and faith of their people. It was like their church, their museum, and their university, all residing in one hut. From the opening at its farthest end steps the man with the feather laurel. He is the village's elder, the shaman chief, the storyteller, the teacher, the doctor. Each dweller knows him in a different light. Today he is the shaman. Common chatter and noise dissipates when he emerges. Villagers leave their breakfast and make for the epicenter. No man or child speaks. In seconds a crowd has gathered around the stone plinth. They bow as the chief climbs onto his ceremonial perch. Held in each hand were the hunter's leather sacks. The old man holds them up for all to see. The watching mass whisper amongst themselves. With great care the sacks are laid down on the stone. The shaman loosens the binding of the bag to his left. It's upended. Nothing happens. The sack seems empty. Then, with a little flick of his wrist, the vessel releases its prize. Out drops a tarantula, wider than a large man's hand, all dark brown except for a small, intermittent patch of black. The thing holds its legs tightly against its belly. Slowly, tenuously, it reaches out, feeling the rock underfoot and the sun overhead. Shaman Chief reaches over and lays his hand down near the beast. Palm upturned, his other hand gently shepherds the tarantula into his waiting grasp. Both hands rise up and present the arachnid to the watching crowd, and then to the sun in the sky. A murmur of approval ripples through the revelers. With little more effort, the spider is returned to the earth and given its freedom. Now the bag to the right is hoisted up and opened. The shaman pulls the binding from its neck and relieves the sack of its contents. Villagers gasp. Their gaze falls on the creature with fear and hatred. Head rising from the plinth to peer into the face of the shaman chief is a black snake. Eyes a shocking yellow, body ringed with vibrant red bands. The beast is thick and swollen like a common garden slug, but its demeanor is that of a predator. It calculates, it judges, tongue flicking at its lips. Again the old man lays his hand down near the creature, the snake watching his movements closely. All around, members of the crowd cry out in fear for their chief. He wears no signs of apprehension, other hand moving out to coax the beast into his embrace. Quickly, the snake recoils and strikes, its head punching the shaman chief's forearm. Curved teeth like fishing hooks penetrate his skin, firing a payload of toxins and death into the old man's sagging flesh. The men of the village leap up onto the stage. Weapons are drawn. With foot, axe, and club, the snake is dashed into the stone. It tries to defend itself, mouth wide, neck pulled back ready to attack, but the strength and technology of the men make short work of its slaughter. Only a red stain on the plinth remains. Malika, Shaman Chief's daughter, rushes onto the stage. She envelops her father, arms wrapping around him. A groan leaves her when she sees the wound. 2 lumps of meat have been torn from his wrist. Now it streams with red fluid. The man falters, his stoicism diminishing. Fear and shame cover his face. Shafts of orange light filter through the canopy. Bonfires, piled high as 3 men, spit flames callously into the heavens. Smoke creeps past the huts, along the alleys, flowing to the walls that circle the place. Evening encroaches too. The sun hits the horizon, looming and deep red in tone, initializing the insect's urge to click and hum. Their chorus, incessant and robotic. Across the sky the moon lingers, pale and sullen, just a white dot on an azure ocean, its large dark crater the only distinguishing feature. From above, the villagers look like rats or mice, coursing around each other, swarming, rushing, seemingly mindless. They feed the bonfires with every flammable object, running to the forest and their homes, grabbing wood and tinder and throwing it into the huge pyres, the placement of which make a rough circle around the stone heart of the settlement, the ceremonial plinth, still caked with blood from man and snake. As the adults work, the children stand quietly at the stone's edge, watching, gripping at each other for assurance. They have never seen their parents work in so feverish a manner. They don't behave like the people they know. They have lost their humanity somehow, lost it in their compulsion to burn and burn again. Then the dancing and the music starts, if you can call the din music. Percussive sounds of all volume and variance meet in disharmony, played at disparate rates, beats not nearly matching. Their deep bass sounds vibrate through everything. Even the rib cages and hollow parts of the settlers rattle. Next comes a chorus of strange vocal harmonies. Women with voices that undulate with astounding vibrato. Men chant, shouting, repeating the words of their leaders. All of them unbound, unashamed, passionate with madness. Once all in the village is burned, the crowd becomes a single force. It flows, running in columns from the stone center to the chief's hut and then back. The hunters among them hold up torches, their bodies covered in the red mud of the local river banks. Others in the mall hold up icons and pendants, statues of animals, necklaces with metal figures hanging from them. They parade past the chief's home, brandishing their idols, chanting, shouting, and then marching off again in a continuous cycle of people. Some light flickers from inside the raised hut. A small paraffin lamp swings in the rafters. Below it, Shaman Chief and his daughter sit in silence, while all around them shakes with the rapturous events unfolding outside. She wipes away the moisture of tears and sweat from her cheeks before offering her father a flask. The man fails to notice her. The girl tries to speak, but before a word is spoken, her father holds up his hand, a simple gesture that asks for silence. Sudden rage comes across her. "No, don't do this. It's madness. You are delirious. You need to rest." The sentence is cut short by the man's hand. This time it ends her speech with a firm slap. "I am not so weak as to ignore your insolence. I will do what I was born to do, what I was taught to do. It is the only way." The chief's voice wavers with every word, strength ebbing away, his slap nowhere near as harsh as Malika has come to know them. She stares at him. Her father's face has swollen. She can see marks like bruises about his neck and arms. His closed eyes and blank face tell her to submit to his will. "I will not be part of it," says the girl in her exotic tongue. She rises and turns to exit the hut. When the gods are watching, when the eye of the sun and eye of the moon peer down, you must act. They must see our actions, to judge our resolve. The room rings with his words. Soon the old man rises. He slips on his feather wreath, clads himself in the wooden armor of his fathers. From a glass bottle hidden from view, he takes a long swig of some brown liquid. Then, from a box of darkest mahogany, he pulls a long, thin knife made of bone. The handle carved in the shape of a beast. The man daubs his face in red clay and is ready. With a great deal of trouble, he descends from the hut. The crowd greets him with cheers, their chorus increasing in volume and pitch. Frenzy would be an adequate word to describe the sight, pandemonium another, though amongst the savage movement and fire was some stillness, a thing that the chief recognizes instantly. Standing, removed from the rest of the settlers, are a group of women. They surround a young girl. He sees them combing her hair, painting her skin with patterns and motifs, dousing her with the scented water that the villagers' women like to make. The girl remains calm amongst them, barely moving or showing any emotion, doll-like in her countenance. Then her head turns slightly. Her eyes meet with the chief's. The crowd parts for him. Slowly, in anguish, he walks to her, regarding the jewelry and other embellishments, gazing at her perfect, clean flesh. Then he is upon the group, offering his hand to the girl, beckoning her, daring her to follow him into the madness. She gives him her hand and is pulled away from the women. The little girl glances up at the man. His face is calm. Now she is part of them all, her and the shaman chief, propelled through the alleys and paths, around the village's central circle, through the stone gates, and out into the wild. The column of revelers twists and worms its way into the dense foliage, illuminated by the hunter's fire, Their chanting and chiming brings music to the jungle. It wanders amongst the trees too. Soon enough they reach their goal, the crowd splitting into two long lines, encircling a large gnarled tree. The thing, sullen and mouldy, hangs over them. Their light refuses to penetrate the canopy. At its base, nestling between two huge roots, is a table of sorts, made of stone, rectangular in shape, and pitched at an angle. Its head raised up slightly, and bored into its thick slate are inch-wide holes. The chief and his young partner step out of the mess of men and women and move to the stone table. All around them the villagers contort and stamp their feet to the feverish beat, the drumming and banging making the air itself feel viscous. Like ripples through water, the sound surges at them, shaking them to the core. The wide circle of settlers contracts around the table. Arms are flung up with hands shaking. Then the circle relaxes, with heads all bowed. Arms pointed to the ground, all the bodies work together, united in dance. The girl is helped onto the table, still showing no emotion, no reaction to the madness of her people. She lies there on the cold slab, hands held at her sides, staring up into the heavens. Shaman Chief places his hand on the youngster's belly. She winces. The man starts to repeat something, some incantation. Shouting it out into the night, the girl closes her eyes. A handful of red petals are thrown over her. Then, from within his armor, he pulls the thin bone knife, its color rendered a moody orange by the firelight. The enchantment continues, with the shaman's voice reaching up an octave. He lifts the knife up, for the world to witness it. Again the crowd contracts, all the bodies rushing in with hands shaking. Then they bow and retreat. The old man takes the bone dagger in his right hand, and with the left he draws a circle on the girl's stomach. He makes a motion with the weapon, a stabbing movement down towards her belly button. More words are spoken loudly into the darkness. He makes the movement again, but this time his arm falls without any real malice. The old man slumps over, all strength lost, muscles failing him. His head lands on the girl's waist. She jumps in surprise, not sure of his meaning, but it is quickly evident to her that the chief is not being perverse or wanton. She sees his empty eyes, his lack of inner light. The man is dead. Muscles fail. Legs give way under the weight of the upper body. The new corpse tumbles over. All around the revelers scream in shock. Their movements continue momentarily. Some break away from the crowd and attend to their chief. Others, lacking purpose, become still. They just watch as havoc surrounds them. One hunter leaps from the melee. He steps over to the shaman's body, peering over the shoulders of the caregivers, gaining a sight of his master's pallid face. With that he roars in pain and disgust. The torch he holds is thrown to the floor, and his spear is taken in hand. With two fast leaps, the hunter is at the young girl's side. She sees him coming. Eyes growing wide, the man looms over her. The spear is held up high above his head. Then with all his might it's thrust down into her soft, flat stomach. The tip tears through the flesh and muscles. He pulls it out. From the hole bulges a piece of the girl's intestine and a large spit of blood. The wailing doesn't start until he penetrates her the second time. Hands move down to protect her belly. The crazed hunter stabs them too, metal spearhead plunging with ease through her palms and gut. Whether in shock or simply stupefied by it all, she suddenly feels the thing inside her and lets out a hellish scream, the sound of fear and fright, piercing to the ear and disturbing to the heart. The spear is ripped out of her again. The pressure from her stomach muscles forces her organs out of the tear in her skin onto the table. Blood washes across the surface. It courses through the holes and feeds the ground below. Some of the villagers run to stop the hunter. They pull at his arms, grip him by the throat and tug him away, but he is strong. With further he forces them off him and makes for the girl again, his face and arms speckled with crimson dots. Both hands hold his spear, raising it over his head and slamming the thing into the pit of her belly. This time his maniacal power causes the spear to pass through her, grazing her spine and hitting the stone service underneath. The weapon shatters, or at least the shaft of it does, breaking apart in his fists. More hunters leap from the crowd. They swaddle the crazed man with their arms and pull him away. He tries to fight them off, crying out with rage. Now a woman steps over to the young girl. She takes her hand and instantly starts to cry. The girl coughs. Little red spots appear around her face. Her screams reducing themselves to groans, groans leading to laboured wheezing. She looks over to the woman, face growing paler by the second. "Are we saved, mother?" the girl mumbles. The old woman leans over to kiss her forehead. Then she whispers something into the girl's ear. After this, the girl loses her fight with the darkness. It descends on her, making her eyelids heavy, making her feel calm, serene, taking away the fear, the angst. Her eyes roll over. One final cough punctuates her life, leaving the mother to moan and cry, alone in the dark. No more song, no more dance, no fervent chanting or banging of drums. The villagers walk alone in near silence, making their way back to the village with 2 fewer members. The hunters, formerly so brave and strong, hang their heads in sorrow. Mothers and grandmothers pray silently to their God, thanking them for not harming their own families. From the highest point in the canopy comes the sound of rain patting on leaves. At first it's subtle, quiet, but the rain soon comes in heavy. The villagers are already in a state of shocked despondency. They have seen a lot this day. With the rain arrives a discovery, a new form of shock, bringing with it an emotion close to terror. When they realize that their ritual, their rite, has failed. The shaman had not completed the ceremony. The hunter had not performed any of it, except the bloodletting. They all look up into the sky to see the rain. It was not unknown for storms to gather quickly in their little valley, but not this quickly, and none of them had rain like this. It's brown, like the reddish type of brown you get from rusted iron, gritty too, with the odor of decay. People start to groan. Some yell out to the gods, pleading with them for salvation. Tired women cry. Panicked men shake with fear. From the village, Malika hears them. She has not joined the fanatics, but she sees the rain in its foul colour. She knows that something is wrong. Fear drives her back to the chief's hut. The paraffin lamp is taken, along with her father's hidden alcohol. Then into the night she runs, out of the village, out through the gates, before any of the revellers can see her, out and away from the madness, towards anywhere but there.